Well, good morning. Welcome to Doctors and Scientists. If it's Doctors and Scientists, it must be Friday. And we're hoping you have a wonderful Friday morning. We have such a treat today. And so many times in this movement, there have been people that have made, so many sacrifices. And Dr. Kirk Moore is he is a hero to all of us. You may have seen him in the news just recently. He was, because of him protecting his patients, he was under federal indictment by the Department of Justice. He paid such a price in terms of persecution that he underwent over the COVID era. Dr. Moore, welcome to the show. You are such a hero, and thank you so much for what you've done and what you continue to do to protect health freedom.
Well, Brian, thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. So Kirk, start with your background. I'm going to direct people to the Freedom Wellness Clinic, freedomwellnessclinic.com. That is your organization. And I'm reading your bio here. Dr. Kirk Moore is a plastic surgeon with nearly 2 decades of experience helping patients feel confident and comfortable in their own skin. He trained at the University of Miami School of Medicine, graduating with Alpha Omega Alpha honors, and completed his plastic surgery residency at the University of Colorado Health Sciences Center. His rigorous education and dedication to his craft have shaped his reputation for precision, safety, and natural-looking results. He became board certified in 2002. A lot of our individuals that watch the show are on their own MAHA journey. One of the ways that we can make America healthy is we can make ourselves healthy.
You know, the MAHA movement and the whole MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, globally, that's where we should be.
Right.
But my personal position on that is the single most effective way to make our country healthy again is to stop the shots, taking food dyes out and fluoride out of water, and not spraying the glyphosate on our crops, not stop the geoengineering and cloud seeding, and all that is gonna help. I mean, but
right.
In my opinion, that's peripheral to actually injecting caustic, toxic substances into newborn babies and into our children as they grow older.
I couldn't agree more. And this is something where you and within your practice, you put your money where your mouth is. And so let's talk about how you approach the shots during the COVID-19 era. Obviously there's mandates afoot. There are people that are, probably approaching your practice and many other practices saying, I have to get these shots in order to be employed, in order to provide for my family. Right. So I set that up. So take it from there.
Well, it started with, it started with the shutdowns. It started with no treatment, all the experts saying, hey, we just don't have a treatment for it. There's no reason to treat anybody, but when they do get really sick, just send them to the hospital. So that to me raised a huge red flag. And I started treating people. I started reading about it, Vladimir Zelenko, Peter McCullough, George Fareed in California. All of these people were putting a whole bunch of stuff out there that kind of educated me and allowed me to kind of put myself in a position where I could at least treat my family, friends, and patients. And so that's where it started. Then you start hearing the rumblings of, vaccine, and nothing's going to get back to normal until, we have a vaccine. I was vaccine injured from a Hep B vaccine when I started medical school in 1989. I haven't had one since. And, I just think we've been poisoning our kids, and especially since 1986 on, certainly since 1989. I think the numbers will show that. When I hear that, my ears prick up a little bit, but I was okay with it. And I was like, look, I was just telling everybody that I knew, telling my family, telling my friends, telling my patients, look, this thing is experimental. There's an experimental technology behind it. What's a lipid nanoparticle? What's in it? The safety data sheet on the Pfizer, on all of them, I'm just naming Pfizer, but that says it page intentionally left blank on front and back. So you don't have chemical structure. You don't have any studies. You don't have any information. You don't know what the toxicity is. You don't know what the mutagenicity is, carcinogenicity. You don't have anything. And, look, any 8th grade science student can tell you, look, we've been trying to get, a cure for cancer for 100 years. We've been trying to get a vaccine and trying to get a vaccine for AIDS for 40 years. And then all of a sudden we're going to get, a vaccine for the common cold virus that has been around with us for millennia in less than 9 months. So that just, I'm like, it just doesn't make any sense. I just, I think Vladimir Zelenko was the first person that I know that called this a bioweapon. I believe even RFK at some point when, before his run for presidency, and actually maybe even during his run for presidency, but before he kind of joined forces with Donald Trump, was calling it a bioweapon too. So
absolutely.
And it is, and it was developed by the DoD. They gave it to Moderna. Moderna didn't have any products on the market until this vaccine. NIH, I believe, owns half of that patent. So half the money that the federal government is giving them is going right back to the scientists at the NIH. It's just the whole thing. As you just look at it and look into it and study it and research it, is just it's a scam. It's a scam from day one.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. When you look into this and you look into the development of the mRNA shot, you see that the entanglements are with BARDA, which is Biomedical Advanced Research Projects Agency, and then the Department of Defense, the Central Intelligence Agency. It looks, smells, tastes like a bioweapon. So why don't we just call it what it is?
Right.
So no, and I really appreciate you doing that. I mean, I'm following your lead. So you faced this dilemma, and you made a really, really conscious and conscientious choice in order to help these individuals regarding the vaccine. When, before we get into how you help these individuals, what were you seeing in terms of the mandates? And I'm not as familiar with Utah. I know that in California, the mandates were completely draconian. But from an individual basis, what were people coming to you with regarding what they would lose if they didn't take the shot, or if their children didn't take the shot?
Well, I think the first people that I saw were the healthcare, industry people, nurses, doctors, physical therapists, respiratory therapists, even clerks at, hospital, in hospital wards, and even some of the large clinics were mandating it. And so those people were coming to me saying, that their job was, they were going to get fired.
Right.
If they didn't get it. I don't think the mandates started, and that's when I started really looking into it. And like I said, I was just kind of like, okay, here's a vaccine, it's coming out. I never wore a mask. I lost my hospital privileges because I wouldn't wear a mask. They kicked me out. And then and I wouldn't, it's just kind of like, I wouldn't go to stores that make me wear a mask. I would walk in without one. And if somebody said to me and made me wear a mask, I'd turn around and walk out. But nobody, for the most part, nobody really bothered us that much. It was really different. Salt Lake County, which is where I live at the south end of Salt Lake County, and then Utah County, which is south of us. Utah County was much more conservative. It took them a lot longer to kind of institute any kind of mask mandates or mask requirements. But eventually they succumbed to the pressure. I think more of the kind of the state government side. But I, right from the get-go, I was a rebel, and, pushing against all this stuff. When they started kind of mandating this, and then they started kind of, it started to become a requirement. And the big one was, kids going to college, and some kids going to high schools, going to college, the mandates came out.
Right.
And then you started hearing some things about, middle school and high school kids were going to be mandated for it. And so I had parents in a panic coming to me. And that's when I made the decision. I called up the Utah Health Department. I said, hey, I want to become a vaccine clinic. I filled out the paperwork, had to watch a few videos. It was just kind of silly. I had my staff watch the videos and, just kind of dot all the I's, cross all the T's. And we started taking shipments of vaccines in the summer of 2021.
When an individual came into your clinic and they were looking to, be able to, and I don't know how to lightly put this, get a vaccine in your clinic, then they would be able to get like a saline injection or an injection into an orange. I don't know if you want to go into detail, and you certainly do.
Yeah, no, I can go into any detail that you want, Brian.
Right, right. So, yeah, how did that work?
Well, so patients would call our office, and then sometime in late 21, one of my neighbor, Chris Anderson, who was the final co-defendant with me. The other two ended up taking, one took a plea and the other one took a diversion agreement. But she said, look, we need to protect you. And I was like, from what? I'm not doing anything wrong. There's, mandates are not laws and everything else, but they just felt that we needed to do something. So, so Chris came in, started screening people, because prior to that, for the first probably 4 or 5 months, people were just calling. I'd bring them in and give them a card. If they had a kid, that we didn't want the kids to feel kind of left out from their friends and be bullied or anything else. So we would give them a saline shot. And I would tell the parents, and if the parents were in there and they were getting a card as well as with their kid, then the parents would get a saline shot as well. But otherwise, nobody was getting any shots.
Okay.
And then, but I didn't want a 13-year-old kid going back to school, starting 9th grade, and all of his friends have, a COVID shot and a card. And they said, oh, well, did your arm hurt? Did it, whatever.
Right.
And the other kid's going, well, I just got the card. So I didn't want them to be in that position. And so we just, with kids, we just started giving them the shot. And then as the age went down, from 12 to, I think it was 6, right? 6 and older, or over 5, whatever it was.
Over 5 at the beginning. Absolutely. And, it phased in. I'm sorry, not at the very beginning. Yeah.
So we would just do the same thing.
Okay.
And, but I never, one of the arguments that the government had against this, and we haven't gotten to that part yet, but, one of the arguments that they had against this was that we were keeping, the vaccines from being used by some other clinic. And one of the concessions that we got from their witnesses alone was that by the summer of 21, they had an overabundance of vaccines. They didn't have, it's not like they were struggling getting it. Their warehouses were full. As a matter of fact, they started kind of tossing it. And then in January of 23, I think the state of Utah dumped at least 2 million doses of, the vaccine alone. So they're coming after me for 2,270 doses that I, supposedly misappropriated. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
This transpired. I'm sure that things were spreading by word of mouth that this was a possibility, that you could do this, and what you were very heroically doing at the time. When did, and if I'm skipping ahead in the story, please let me know. I mean, I guess maybe the best question is then what happened next?
Well, we were treating people for, risk of job loss. There's 2 military bases here. So a lot of military that were panicked. We were treating family members that were trying to get in to see their family members in hospitals who were sick and being,
that was the worst. Yeah.
And weren't allowed to get in unless they had a vaccine. And then, the worst part for me was we probably had at least a half dozen people that were taken off the transplant list. They couldn't get medical procedures unless they'd had a COVID shot. And these people were willing to die because they were like, well, I'm either going to die from the shot or I'm going to die from my own disease, and I don't want to take that shot. So, I mean, that's how scared people were. So we did that. And then in January of 23, January 11th of 2023, the federal government showed up with about 10 or 11 officers, kind of lined up my office is on the second floor of my building. And, they were lined up in the staircase coming all the way up, and about 5 or 6 people in my waiting area, and served us with, guns weren't drawn. It's not like, some of the other, swatting episodes, but, they served search warrants on Carrie and myself for our phones. They wanted access to our phones. They kind of semi-talked to a couple of my employees and asked them some questions. It was all on camera, all videotaped, and they ended up trying to use that at the trial as, kind of convincing the jury that we had done something wrong.
You are in this legal battle. You said that was January, of 2023.
Yes.
When they first served you papers.
Right.
And this was not, you were charged not with a civil violation, a misdemeanor. This was a felony criminal charge.
Right.
That they were charging you with. And then also, several of your coworkers, definitely Chris Anderson, who you mentioned. So this is really, really serious business, and without having followed the case in enough detail, so much was going on at the same time. But so did you have to post bail?
No. So felony, I guess, and I didn't know this, but
right.
Felony were federal charges now. You generally don't have bail.
Right.
They have pretrial restrictions that they put you on.
Right.
And so they gave us a list of pretrial restrictions that we were not supposed to do. Not supposed to talk to 2 of the people were my employees.
Right.
So they're trying to kind of make sure that I don't talk to my employees. Like, well, that's impossible. Okay. So we had to get that clarified. And so it was just, we're not allowed to talk to your employees about the case. Okay. We're not talking about the case. And then, they supposedly said that we were supposed to go into the marshal's office and get, DNA. We're supposed to get a DNA swab of our mouths so that they could, instead of, or in addition to fingerprinting and on all that stuff. But the checkbox wasn't checked on it. So I got in trouble for that, even though the checkbox wasn't there.
Wasn't checked. Okay.
And then a couple of other things: turn in your passport, promise to not put out, not to try to get another passport. And if we leave the state, to let them know, get permission, just all kinds of things.
Does that whole buccal swab for the DNA sample, does then, if you had undergone that and submitted a DNA sample, does that go into the criminal database?
It does. And you bring that up, Brian. I'm actually permitted to ask them to remove that. So
Good.
Now I've been dismissed, and I have to go through a process of doing it. It's kind of funny.
Should have never been there in the first place. So right. In other words, your DNA was guilty until proven innocent.
Right. And that's my point. My point was, why are you doing this to me? I mean, I had to give up my guns. I had to give up my ammunition. It's just kind of like, look, I have a Second Amendment right.
Right.
And why am I losing my Second Amendment? And I was actually getting ready to fight that and push back on that. But there were just so many other things going on that I didn't have the money for it.
I can't, I can't even imagine. And then how long did it take? You've got to hire attorneys, plural. I'm sure right. that, there was definitely one, multiple attorneys on your team. So the outlay of money is just, I'm unbelievable. And so how long then did it take before your case went to trial?
Well, so it took 2.5 years. I was thrown in jail for 22 days in November of last year for texting my co-defendants that we had our hearing the next day. So on Thursday, October 18th, I texted him and said, I think it's Thursday the 18th, whatever, 17th, 18th, whatever the Thursday was. Texted him and said, we have a court hearing tomorrow. I knew that they were having problems contacting or in communication with their attorneys. And so I didn't even know if they knew we had our hearing.
Oh my goodness.
And so I texted him and I said, hey, we have a hearing tomorrow. I put forward a motion to dismiss. And so we were just kind of rah, let's, keep our fingers crossed. Let's do what we can to make this case go away. I thought we had a good chance. We didn't. We lost both motions. One, the motion to dismiss, and then the necessity defense that the prosecution had filed against us, basically keeping me from bringing in any witnesses as to the reasons why they wanted the vaccine, and bringing in any people that have been damaged by the vaccine, bringing in anybody that any witnesses, like expert witnesses, that would testify to the problems with the vaccine, the deaths, the disabilities, the autoimmune problems, anything. Right. And so I was, disallowed from doing all that. So it was a bad day in court for us on the 19th.
So they essentially basically took away, several different amendments, but all of your First Amendment rights.
Yep.
And then said that all of this information really that is at the center of your case is not relevant to your case, and so therefore it's inadmissible. I mean, talk about cutting you off at the knees. That's preposterous.
Right. They completely muzzled us. They took everything that we were gonna essentially, everything that we were going to talk about. We were going to bring in. I could have brought in 3,000 people, one after the other, and come in and testify as to why they came to see us as opposed to going to somebody else to get a vaccine. And then I could have brought in another 3,000 people who were either family members of dead family members that had died from the vaccine, or that were people that had actually been damaged by the vaccine, and I tell them how much they would have preferred having somebody like me take care of them. And so, and experts, like Peter McCullough, who's the most published author in the United States and worldwide on on COVID now, and he's the most published author in cardiology and cardionephrology. He's got a resume that will beat anybody else's that's out there. But again, I wasn't able to use that.
And so, because you texted your co-defendants, then you were slapped with 22 days in prison. Is that correct?
Yeah. So there were three of us. So I texted two of my other co-defendants. One of them answered. And so she went to jail with me. And the other one was the one that turned us in. So she was the one that took the plea deal. But again, they're after me. So they kept Chris in jail for 2 days, and they kept me in jail for 22.
22 days. Just because you were notifying your co-defendants that there was a hearing, right?
Right.
Maybe they should be there. Maybe they should show up. Maybe they should have their counsel there at the same time. All of this just, it takes on, these Orwellian implications in terms of what they did to you. And so you finally go to trial. None of this is admissible. None of your information is admissible. I mean, this again, completely preposterous. So what was left after they cut out, all of these pieces of, the relevance, regarding to the service that you did, for the community, for these people. So what was left to present?
My whole argument was, and we weren't able to really present this, but one of my major tenets all along, and I talked to my attorneys about this numerous times, was, I had this agreement that I had filled out with the Utah Health Department that had the CDC logo at the top. It didn't have any federal documentation, federal paperwork numbers. The Paperwork Reduction Act from 1974 said that all federal documents have to go through a vetting process, and they have to have like a registration number. And then that way you can identify when they were changed and when, what modifications were done, and when they changed some wording or changed some paragraphs and all that. And so, but that hadn't been done. So this really officially was not a federal document. So we tried to make that argument. The judge didn't buy it. But the other thing that they were trying to, so my argument was if they're going to hold me to this agreement, that I have to vaccinate according to the way they tell me, well, then you need to provide me with a vaccine. And my whole argument from the beginning, and if I'd have gotten up on the stand, that's where we would have gone, is this wasn't a vaccine. The definition of vaccine had to be changed in 2021. We asked the CDC employee who came out, Chris Duggar, if they changed the definition. He's like, oh no, we didn't change the definition. I'm just kind of like, well, what agency do you work for if you don't know that your agency itself changed it? We even showed him a documentation on the last page of this. It showed where they had changed the definition, and he still didn't admit to it being changed. But we got that admitted, so the jury was going to be able to see it.
Right.
And then the other thing too was, they had to prove, and you mentioned BARDA earlier, so they had the head of BARDA, Gary Disbrow, that came and presented, but they didn't present the contract that he kind of helped negotiate with Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J, because that contract was so wrought with problems for the prosecution in terms of their case that they didn't even bring it in. And so they just had him testify. And what they were trying to do is they're trying to get him to testify that the cost of the vaccine was more than $1. But they didn't have any documentation. All they had to do was just take his word for it. The only documentation that they had was that the vaccine actually cost them a penny. So they weren't able to meet the threshold for a felony conviction because it has to be $1,000 or more.
Right.
And they couldn't prove that it was going to be a vaccine. And then the big argument that my attorneys were going after them about was, well, how do you know that this product, or how can you prove that this product, once you dropped it off at Dr. Moore's office, still belonged to the CDC? And we proved and we showed that, one, that the product was bought by the government from a third party, and then that third party had another contract with another third party, McKesson, and or FedEx and or UPS. And then so the liability changed hands with each one of those. And so how is it that all of a sudden when the product shows up at my door, the federal government owns it again? And so they were trying to argue that. And I thought that we had made a really good case those first, 3 to 4 days of trial. And I thought we'd really kind of, punched a bunch of holes in their argument. I was up all night Friday night, kind of wondering what it was that I was missing, because obviously I'm biased, right? I'm looking at it from my perspective and think that we had a great week. These guys over there, one of them's a Harvard grad. The other two people are pretty smart attorneys. They're obviously not, dum-dums, and but I was worried, and so I stayed up till 1, got up again at 4. I was just sitting out on my deck, and 8:30 in the morning we get a call that our case got dismissed. That was unbelievable.
I'm so thankful. I am absolutely thankful. And looking at the comment that the AG made, I want to read this. I guess this was taken off of X, or I still call it Twitter. This is U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi regarding the Department of Justice dropping charges against Dr. Kirk Moore, posted on X July 12th, 2025. At my direction, the Justice Department has dismissed charges against Dr. Kirk Moore. Dr. Moore gave his patients a choice when the federal government refused to do so. He did not deserve the years in prison he was facing. It ends today. I couldn't have been happier. I can't even imagine the elation that you went through, and all of us that were supporting you. I mean, I can't even imagine what it was like to be in your skin at that point. What was it like?
Oh, the feeling was surreal. I collapsed. My attorney called me and said, "Hey, who's there with you?" And my mom was there. She'd been with me, since the beginning, off and on for the last couple of years. But she was there, and I handed her the phone and put it on speaker, because she's a little hard of hearing. So I wanted her to hold the phone, and have it closer to her. And when Kathy told me that she'd been on the phone with prosecutors, all 3 of the prosecutors called her, on a group call, and told her that, AG Bondi had told them that the case was going to be dismissed. I literally collapsed on the floor and just started crying. It was such a relief. And it's still surreal to some degree. And, 4 days later, I'm in her office in Washington, D.C., shaking her hand, giving her a hug,
Wow.
along with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Senator Lee, Mike Lee, my state senator. So,
Right.
I mean, the change of fortune from, Friday afternoon at 5 when we left the courthouse to Wednesday at noon when I'm in the DOJ in the Attorney General's office, shaking hands and smiling and, sharing stories was amazing.
Before you got that call, how could you sleep? I mean, it is, I can't, I can't even imagine. I mean, what happened previously? I mean, they threw the book at you, and we were, I was reading stories of 35 years in federal prison, and and this and that and the other. But that, I mean, and you'd already served 22 days in prison, so you knew what they could do, and you knew that they could do it. I mean, I can't imagine the level of stress and the level of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, it was a it was a really tough 2.5 years. And I guess you just get through it. Look, I'm a pretty principled guy, and I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong.
Right.
Brian, this, or maybe, but I think everybody knows this, but they don't really think about it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The CDC has no legislative authority. Okay.
None.
They do not pass laws. They do not institute laws. They cannot even mandate anything. There's nothing that they can do to institute anything. They are an advisory agency only. That is their charter.
Right.
And what has happened here over the last 50 years, 70 years since the CDC was established, I believe in 1946, they have their recommendations, let's call them, have become kind of more of like accepted as mandates or accepted as, hey, this is what we need to do. And they get instituted by all 64 jurisdictions that they have, the 50 states plus another 14 large cities that have their own separate health departments. Right. And probably Indian organizations and everything else have their own. So, but what's happened is that when the CDC quote unquote makes a recommendation, it basically just gets taken as law or as an edict or as a mandate or as a requirement. But that's not the case. And we got that out in court. We got them to say that the CDC doesn't have any authority to do this. They don't have any authority to make it. And the interesting thing is that I was accused of obstructing or, there's a word called purloin, interfering with the lawful governmental functions of the CDC. Well, the CDC doesn't have any lawful governmental functions. And so that was my whole argument. And, so what made me, what allowed me to sleep, so it's a long answer to your very short question, sorry, is that I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. And I, and even if they're going to throw me in jail, and even if they're going to, kind of torture me, not torture necessarily, but, they were going to, throw me in jail and punish me for something, for what I felt was all I was doing is providing the best service and the service that I knew how for my patients, my individual patients, one by one, with full informed consent. I just felt that I'd done my job, and I'm really disappointed in medicine in general for, all of the other physicians that are out there that look at a piece of paper that says intentionally left blank and say that, oh, I gave my patients full informed consent. Well, how do you do that? What are you injecting in them? What was in that product? What are the long-term effects? How long was it studied? What is, what's it going to do 10 years from now? What's it going to do 10 days from now? And then when you look at almost 40,000 VAERS reports for deaths that would have been reported, and 74% of those happened within the first 48 hours of an injection. And they say, well, that's just coincidence. They had 1,223 deaths in the Pfizer study alone, out of 40,000 people, or actually out of 20,000 people, because they 20,000 on one side, 20,000 on the other.
Control, correct.
And they had 1,200 deaths, and they said, well, that's out of those 40,000 people, we would have had 1,200 deaths. We have 1% of our country that was dying on a year-to-year basis. Okay, every 1%. We have 330 million people. That's about, 3,000 people. Okay. In 40,000 people that they treated in a 2-month study, they had 1,200 people that died. Okay. So how does that make sense?
One last question for you. And I really also want to know how people can help. I mean, given the just this recitation of horror, everything that you have had to go through in the past, now over 2.5 years, what's going to happen regarding recompense and reparations for the damage, the irreparable harm that has been done to you, your reputation, your coworkers, your practice, and how do we support you getting those reparations?
Well, I had to sign in order for the dismissal to happen. There's something called the Hyde Amendment, which kind of absolves the government from any fault, and keeps me from suing them for legal attorney's fees or for legal fees. So I'm on the hook for my attorney's fees, as are my co-defendants. I think the total amount is somewhere in the $700,000 to $800,000 range.
Incredible.
And that's really cutting corners, keeping it to a minimum, getting discounted rates from, my attorneys. I mean, I had to hire two, I had to hire 2 attorneys just for me. And then all their staff. And then I had to hire another attorney for my business. Just because I guess it's a separate entity and they sued a separate entity. So we couldn't go to court without that entity being, represented. Otherwise they get a default judgment against them. So it was, I had 3 people sitting in the courtroom. Now they all helped. I'm not saying that, but it was certainly a very expensive thing. The other side is, I lost a lot of business. The patients that came to me really loved me. The patients that I took care of really loved me and, and everything else. But I just didn't have the bandwidth to kind of continue to manage my business and do things the way I used to do it. I used to get up in the morning, think about my marketing, think about what I was going to do. I'd go to conferences. I would go to local events. I was going to, some of these, kind of like I'd put up a booth at at an expo or something somewhere. But I couldn't afford it. All my marketing stopped. I lost 2/3 of my business volume, and sold everything that I had except for my house, and that's on the market now. So it's been a huge adjustment for us. I don't, I'm not trying to whine and cry or complain.
Absolutely not.
That's
not at all.
The reality. I mean, it's the process is the punishment, Brian. And they do this on purpose. They probably spent over $3 million just, suing me essentially, but persecuting me over $28,000 in what they claim are damages.
This is something that needs to be picked up. You're just at the point where you're celebrating the decision and that they didn't, irreparably, essentially end your life and livelihood for the rest of your life. But I am so sorry about that. I mean, I had heard of the Hyde Amendment before. I did not, really know the context of it. But that, it's absolutely, utterly nonsense, completely wrong, injustice, period.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with you, unfortunately. And I don't know. We'll just have to. Now I can apply myself back to my business. I can get back to normal life. And, hopefully turn things around. I'm 60 years old. I wasn't planning on having to kind of restart essentially at that age, but it is what it is. I'm a free man. My kids have a dad. And I can get on shows with you and talk about it and hopefully get people to push back against the government, do their own research, do not comply, and realize that only you look out for you. Nobody else is going to look out for, your own best interests. So you are your own best advocate.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you. And thank you so much for your bravery. Thank you for, this amazing gift that you offered your patients, to the whole health freedom community. And thank you for just standing. It's been a pleasure interviewing on the show. I think that we need to spur on to action to continue to help you. So Dr. Moore, thank you for being such a hero.
Well, Brian, thanks for having me on.
And thank you, everybody. This is an important episode of Doctors and Scientists. I guess hopefully there's not unimportant episodes of Doctors and Scientists, but please spread the word. Have everybody check this out. Let's incite people to action to help Dr. Kirk Moore. And thank you so much, and have a great Friday. Again, spread the word, spread the word, spread the word.
My name is Diane Kulik. I'm a family physician, and I'm also board certified in geriatrics and integrative holistic medicine. But I started out traditional, and once I graduated residency, was teaching residents, and I even did a research project early on about how to force or convince people to do flu shots and pneumonia shots. And I was, believing all the traditional things.
Right, and let's just stop on that let's just have a chat about that for a second.
Okay.
So you were a family doctor.
Correct.
And you believed in the shots, the schedule, the CDC
Correct.
schedule. And just on that note, why do you think you did? Do you think it was from your training?
I believed what they told me. Mm-hmm. I believed everything they told me.
And if you
initially.
Exactly. And so you worked on how to persuade people to take the flu shot.
Correct.
So what did you think of people that were anti-vaxxers and didn't take the flu shot? How did that make you feel?
I thought they were being very risky, not taking care of themselves, not being cooperative.
So when you wrote whatever you would call that thing on how to persuade people, what was in that? What were you thinking? How to persuade them?
Just how to convince them it's for their own good, that this is important, it'll keep them safe and healthy, and keep them well. I believed what I was taught.
Of course. And so did you vaccinate babies? Or?
Yes, I did pediatric care for babies. I vaccinated my children. Fortunately, it was back when they were not getting too many. And I made no connection with my son's super high fever. My daughter used to have terrible screaming fits. She was early on allergic to dairy. That could have been other things. Of course, now her daughter had severe eczema after all her multiple vaccines when she was born.
So did you tell your patients when they would come in that these vaccines were safe and effective?
Of course. And I believed it.
I find that fascinating.
Yeah, you're embarrassing me terribly.
No. I don't mean to embarrass you.
I can understand the other doctors, but they need to wake up.
So yes, they do. And what is it that made you wake up?
20 years ago, part of my conversion to holistic medicine, I was having terrible headaches, horrible restless legs at night, some mild fibromyalgia, and I just thought that was the way it was going to be. I tried some different things. One of the things I did a heavy metal urine test that I had learned about. And I was very high on mercury. I also had arsenic. And I thought, damn, these flu shots I've been telling people to get as I researched it, they have mercury in them. And of course, at that point, I don't think anybody was giving them to pregnant women and infants, but we were giving them to adults and older people. And so I immediately stopped doing flu shots myself, had my fillings revised, and started doing detox, which I've done ever since then. And as I was looking at the integrative world, going to conferences, reading papers, books, studying, I realized that much of what I was doing was dangerous and bad for people. Because it had been toxic to me, it hurt me.
And at what point did you stop vaccinating people?
Well, that was probably at least 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped doing vaccines and stopped recommending them and tried to talk people out of them. Fortunately, many of my patients nowadays, I would say at least half, are not doing COVID shots. Partly to me convincing them, partly, family, relatives, friends. I feel terrible for the ones that are doing it. Which includes all of my relatives, my husband's relatives, our kids, our grandkids. Everybody's had the COVID vaccine. My ex-brother-in-law is now in the hospital. He just went in yesterday for a heart rate of 200, and they found out he's underlying that's got COVID, despite all the shots and boosters.
What do your
Practically
colleagues?
killed him.
What do your colleagues think of you that you've done this big 360?
I don't have a lot of contact. I'm working for my own practice, my own patients, and I don't work in the hospital anymore. So a lot of my patients see specialists that I know, and most of them probably think I'm crazy, as do all my relatives.
It is a big story. I mean, you went from being that doctor to a really good doctor.
But why would my relatives, my daughter, my granddaughter, think that I was telling them to do something dangerous to their health when I'm telling them to avoid vaccines? I had my medical assistant who worked with me for probably about 10 years came into my office, was ready to work for me. She had 4 children. None of them had any vaccines. They were the healthiest kids I've ever seen. Still to this day, one just graduated college. They are so healthy, so smart, never get sick, never had any vaccines. And so at that point, the only young kids that I was seeing were pretty much ones who the parents didn't want any vaccines, and the other pediatricians kicked them out of the office. So they were the families that I was seeing, because I was willing to take care of them. And certainly during this COVID time, besides not getting vaccines, I've been talking with a lot of people. I'm doing virtual medicine the last couple of years, and treating people with ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. The compounding pharmacies will fill it. The other pharmacies won't. But people can get it, within a day, and it works amazingly. People should have been prepared and had it at home before they started.
Let me ask you a question about ivermectin then. So when they shout out, horse paste or whatever they call it, horse dewormer, and there were people going to Tractor Supply and buying the horse one.
I've had a few patients who bought the paste,
and
we can get the pills easily.
Can you get it easily?
Yes.
People don't know where to go.
There are several places right around here. Troy, West Bloomfield, compounding pharmacies. Over now where I live in Grand Rapids, there are compounding pharmacies. There are many places you can get it. But the doctors who are working for Beaumont, Henry Ford, St. John, any of the hospital doctors, which I'm not, thank God, are not allowed. And the regular pharmacies.
And why do you think, why is that they're not allowed? What's going on?
Because they're making lots of money from people dying. Why treat them? They make more money on remdesivir and ventilators and COVID deaths. Why would you want to let people prescribe something that you weren't making money on? Everybody's got their pocket full, whether it's the media, the hospitals, the hospital administrators, the researchers. Everybody's making money off this, except the people who are dying.
What's your advice to us, the people, general public out here, as we go into the winter or fall or whatever you want to call it? What is your advice? Do we need to stock up on? How do we need to stay fit?
Stock up on vitamin C, 4,000 to 6,000 a day. D3 when people are sick, 50,000 3 days in a row, then 10,000 a day. Quercetin or hydroxychloroquine. Zinc, 25 to 50 milligrams. Ivermectin, get a doctor to prescribe it. Go on FLCCC, I prescribe it. Order it from India, do whatever. Have it on hand. Get a nebulizer. Have some hydrogen peroxide and iodine you can nebulize. Colloidal silver. There's so many simple things. Nobody talks about miracle mineral solution, chlorine dioxide, that works well too. Lots of things work.
Do you have a website that people can follow you on?
Sure, www.abc-wellness.com.
Okay.
ABC Wellness.
I think everyone's going to have you on speed dial.
Come on at it.
Is there anything else you want to tell the people?
Yes, protect yourself, protect your family. Don't take the shots. Don't take any vaccines. Don't take a flu shot. Don't take a pneumonia. Don't take any of these. They're all dangerous. They're all toxic. They're killing people. And a lot of people aren't realizing when they get sick and have a stroke and get Alzheimer's and that it's from the shots destroying their immune system. But stop now. Be prepared. Stock up. Have all the things you need to stay well. We've learned so much through COVID about how to treat viruses. We got a handle on it. It's so simple.
Thank you.
Just be ready.
Thank you for everything you do, your bravery, for telling your story. I really, really appreciate you.
Can I tell one quick story?
Please.
Early on, I don't remember when the movie Vaxxed came out, but I used to show it in my waiting room office. So people coming in and waiting, they all see it, and I had several copies, and I would get copies to people. I gave a new copy to my daughter-in-law. She was pregnant. A couple months later, she gave it back to me, never opened, said, I can't watch it. Son was born, had all the vaccines, like my granddaughter, like all our grandkids. And then he started flapping, walking on his toes, covering his ears. He's a great kid. I'm not naming names, but he's a great kid. But he was damaged.
I'm sorry.
And nobody listens. So please don't do that to your kids.
Thank you.
Stop it now.
Thank you.
Thank you.